Hello, my name is Ann Kent. I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist and the owner of Peas and Happiness. Today we're going to talk about cucumbers, specifically how to pick them out. It is cucumber season, and so if you have a lot of cucumbers in your garden, I'm also going to share with you one of my favorite recipes for cucumber vinegar salad. It's a really simple recipe that can use lots of your cucumbers ongoing. But first, we're going to talk just a little bit about the basics of cucumbers. When you are choosing cucumbers, regardless of the type that you're choosing, you want to look for a couple things. Similar to other produce like zucchini, you want to choose a cucumber that is firm to the touch so that it's not too squishy. That can mean that it's been maybe sitting out. It's best stored in the refrigerator in the crisper drawer. So if it's left out at room temperature for too long, then they become a little bit not as crisp, a little bit softer. So you want to look for one that's even throughout. You can see that this has started to dehydrate just a little bit. It's not too bad, so it'll be fine in our salad that we're making. But if you can, you want to find one that's a little bit more even throughout. The other thing you want to know about cucumbers is you don't want to pick them too big. The bigger the cucumber, the less the flavor and the more bitter they can be. So if you see a cucumber that is starting to become yellow, that means that it's grown on the vine too long and it's a little bit past its prime. So look for ones that are a little bit more thin. They'll vary a little bit variety to variety, and so it's best to just compare them to the other cucumbers that they are around. Don't pick the biggest, pick one that's a little bit smaller, a little bit on the medium side, evenly colored, and nice and firm. So like I said, when you take them home, you'll want to store them dry in your crisper drawer. If you wash them beforehand, make sure they're completely dry before you put them in the refrigerator, and then they'll stay good in the crisper drawer for about a week if they're fresh, a little bit less time if you're getting them from the store, and maybe they've been shipped a little bit longer than usual. So the nutrition in cucumbers is kind of minimal compared to other vegetables. So they're not necessarily a powerhouse of nutrition, but they are really tasty. They're really crisp. And like other vegetables, they're low in calorie, but they have a lot of fiber in them. So cucumbers do have some vitamin C, vitamin K, vitamin A. They also contain a little bit of potassium, some manganese, and their antioxidant is actually beta carotene. And that's because they are a cousin of watermelon and pumpkins, which are also high in beta carotene. So they don't look like that from the outside, obviously, but if you know how cucumbers grow on the vine, then it starts to make a little bit of sense. So let's talk about how to prep these. Basically, there are two types of cucumbers. There's a ton of different varieties. And so if you go to the store, you will find some different ones. If you are picking out seeds, you'll find a lot of different varieties of cucumbers, but they're basically sorted into one of two options. Either they are a pickling variety, which tends to be smaller, between like 3 to 7 inches long and a little bit more bumpy. You can see that the texture of that is just not quite as smooth as some other ones. So that is a pickling cucumber. I got these from Miller Farms, and I had to ask what the variety of these. These happen to be Deli King, these little pickling cucumbers. The variety is not going to be super well known. So again, just know pickling versus slicing cucumbers. So these are the larger cucumbers. Sometimes they're also called English cucumbers. There are a lot of different varieties, and you'll see sometimes varieties in the grocery store that are even longer and thinner, but those bigger cucumbers are going to be best for slicing. The main difference between these two is that slicing cucumbers tend to become a little bit more soft if you leave them in liquid, whereas the pickling cucumbers tend to stand up a little bit more, retain their crispy, crunchy flavor or texture just a little bit more than the others. So that's why they're a little bit more preferred for pickling. But in general, especially in salads, you can basically use these two interchangeably. Now, I do want to mention that sometimes cucumbers can be bitter, and this is because of a genetic variance in the cucumber that they actually contain what are called curcuritacins. Though that is a chemical that actually tastes bitter. In large amounts, it is poisonous. In small amounts, it's certainly not going to hurt you, but that's why it tastes bitter, is because it's signaling to your body that this is not something good. Not only genetically are these contained in them, but they tend to be found more based on how the cucumbers are grown. So if a cucumber is not watered regularly, if it has a lot of water and then not enough water, if it's exposed to extreme heat variations, it can become more bitter, and it can also become bitter if it's not fertilized properly. So the bitterness amount of a cucumber is largely determined by how it's grown. So let's talk about how to get rid of that bitter flavor. Now I'm going to actually use both of these varieties in my salad. I might not eat all of them right now, so I'm going to start with these slicing cucumbers, the English variety. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim off the edges. So when I do this, one of the tricks for removing bitterness is to take that end and rub it against the other end of the cucumber. And if you start to see some white film be produced, that is that bitter flavor. That's literally those cucurbitacins that are coming out of the cucumber. Now, I'm not seeing a lot here, so that means that this has been grown really well. Good job, Miller Farms. And so there's not a lot of bitterness in this cucumber. So this is going to taste really delicious. Another way that you can remove some of those bitter compounds is to take a fork and use the tines to scrape the edges of your cucumber, allow it to sit for a couple minutes, and then peel off the peeling of it. Normally, if you get your cucumber from your garden or from the farmer's market, you don't have to peel cucumbers. That's just the way that you can remove some of the bitterness. But if you get a cucumber from the store, you may want to peel it just because they tend to coat it in wax, and that's for shipping purposes. So fresh from the farmer's market, you're not going to need to peel it. But if you're getting it from the grocery store and you notice like a waxy coating on it, it may be best to peel that just so that you're not consuming all of those extras. So for our cucumber salad, we are going to slice this, but I also want to show you briefly how to dice cucumbers as well. If you are pickling them, you can pickle them whole, you can cut them into quarters, you can do basically whatever shape of pickle that you want. But when we're dicing, we're going to cut those ends off. Again, if you're worried about the bitterness, you can do one of those tricks. But then this is super simple. All we're going to do is cut it in half down the middle, and then I like to stand it up on end, cut it in half again, cut it in half again. So we're in quarters now, as you can see. And then I'm going to stack those together, and I'm just going to carefully dice with my blade. So if any recipe calls for diced cucumbers, this is what they're talking about. And you want to make sure that those pieces are generally even. That's going to give you the best quality in whatever recipes you're using. Normally we don't cook cucumbers. Technically you can saute them. It's not super popular. I've actually never done it because I have so many ways that I like fresh cucumbers. But that is a dicing technique. For our cucumber vinegar salad, we are going to slice them. So I've already prepared the marinade for the salad, and it's a simple combination of vinegar, water, and sugar. And this is a really flexible recipe. I found that every family who makes this makes it a little bit different, so you can adjust the ratio of those ingredients to your taste. I do have a download of the recipe if you'd like, but in my recipe I used 1 cup of white vinegar, a half cup of water, and a third cup of sugar. So typically we like it a little bit more vinegary, so I might add a little bit more vinegar to this solution. Sometimes I'll do a cup and a half of white vinegar to 1 cup of water, or I'm sorry, to a half cup of water. So play around with that based on what you like. The longer the cucumbers sit in this solution, the stronger the flavor. So if you are planning to leave that overnight, you may need a little bit less vinegar because those cucumbers are gonna soak up that vinegar more. So to make this specific salad, I'm gonna slice this length horizontally into round coins, and I'm gonna do this as thin as I possibly can. Especially for this salad, the thinner the slices of cucumber, the more they're gonna soak up that marinade and the more flavorful they're going to be. The reason I love this salad for a summertime option, especially if you have garden cucumbers outside, is because you can continue to add more fresh cucumbers to this marinade all week long. If you feel like there's not enough of the liquid, then you can certainly double the amount of liquid. And the other fun thing to do with this salad is to experiment with what you're putting in there. So I'm going to just add these cucumbers to my salad here, and then all this needs to do is chill for. It can chill overnight is best. Like I said, the longer you allow this to sit, the better the flavor. We're almost like pickling these cucumbers, but not quite. So I'm going to cut up a couple more cucumbers and let those sit in there, and then this is going to become a delicious cucumber vinegar salad. So again, if you'd like the recipe to download, you can click on the link and download that, or I will post a couple of other of my favorite summertime cucumber recipes so that you can have a little bit of variety. If you have another favorite recipe that you'd like to share, you're always welcome to post that link in the comments. I love to see what you guys are making. And if you have any other questions or have other summertime veggies that you would like to see prepped, please feel free to drop a comment. So thank you for joining me today, and I look forward to catching you again next week. Take care, everybody.